Was I too hard on Logan Mailloux saying that the Blues lost the trade to the Canadiens? Let's talk about it.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen.
Subscribe to Lock On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you about our St. Louis Blues here in the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I want to talk about if I was too hard on Logan Mailloux. Again, acknowledging that he is a very young player. We have a big couple games coming up. And of course, my favorite and only Friday segment, Are We Feeling Blue? We have a lot to get to on today's episode of Locked On Blues, but I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. On yesterday's episode of Locked On Blues, I did talk about the fact that I believed that the Blues lost the trade to the Canadiens because the Canadiens have very talented Zachary Bolduc, and we have Logan Mailloux, a young defenseman. Logan Mailloux, though, I do want to say, while he hasn't played great in St. Louis, he does have a really good past with how he played in the AHL. He was an all-star. He was such a good player. And you know what? He's still able to be that player he is. The reason why I'm saying this 4 games in for the Blues that I believe the Blues lost the trade, it's more to do with the fact that Zach Bolduc was one of my favorite prospects that the Blues had. And with the Blues trading him to Montreal, I didn't agree. And it was really difficult for me to accept that we traded away a player who was proving how much talent he had in an intense situations like the end of the season. And, I understand that Logan Mailloux has time to develop, and I want him to. I am rooting for Logan. I want to make that very clear that that is a player that I am actively rooting for. One, he's a Blue. So I'm always going to cheer for the guys on my team. And number 2, it's because the realistic way to look at this is he's played like 10 NHL games in his entire career. So we need to not say he's never going to be good. And if I use that verbiage, I apologize. I think my frustrations just really stemmed from the fact that the Blues traded Zach Bolduc. If the Blues made a trade, and I don't know why I'm bringing this guy up right now, but let's go say they traded like Tyler Tucker or an Atika Alexandrov. Why am I bringing up random players? Natika, no, he wouldn't be the same. Let's just say they traded Matthew Joseph. They traded Matthew Joseph, and we got obviously Logan. I wouldn't be upset because I like Matthew Joseph and I'm not trying to diss him. That's not what this is. But he wasn't somebody that we developed, right? He wasn't somebody that was in our system. And it's just different when they're in your system, And I know that the Blues need help defensively. I am not naive. I know that. And they do. Let's face it, the Blues need help defensively because defense is not the strong suit for the Blues. And Logan has the potential to elevate the defense. He does. Now, what I will say is that you also don't want to rush some of these players and put them in situations where they're going to fail. But at the same time, you can't, and I understand with the given situation, you couldn't really send him down to the AHL considering we just, our defensive players that are with the AHL now, they need more time to develop, right? Like an Adam Juracek One day he's going to be a beast, needs a couple more years or a year, depending. But the point that I am trying to make is I don't fault the Blues for having Logan Mailloux start. I don't. I think that's where he deserved to be. But I do think at the same time, fans are allowed to feel frustrated within these games. And I don't think, and I'm speaking for myself, and I'm just saying how I feel, I don't think it's going to be like this all season with him because there's a lot of hockey left. But what I do think right now is that it's an adjustment for him. I would like to forget the games that he even played with the Canadians just because, again, it was so few. And this is a new system, obviously. So the way that I am going to approach this with my mindset now, I've had time to think about it, right? This is a clean slate. You know, he's adjusting to the NHL level. He's adjusting to Coach Montgomery's systems. And I'm not going to sit here and bash a young player when I do believe he has so much more talent than we've seen. And I think at the same time, I can acknowledge my frustrations, my annoyance. It's not necessarily because of Logan Mailloux. I want to make that clear. It's mainly because I personally am upset about the organization trading away Zach Bolduc. And it doesn't help that Bolduc has played very good hockey with Montreal. That does not help the situation. But I don't usually come on this podcast and say, you know what, my opinion was wrong. So this is not like me, but I had time to really think about it. Am I being too judgmental after only a handful of games? Not even a handful. When do we know who won the trade? It is a really a clear winner because the fact that they play, you know, two different positions in a sense, right? You have a defenseman, you have a forward. I think that Zach Bolduc is a very talented player, and he's going to do great things in Montreal. He already has, and I'm not doubting that by any means. But he's had time in the NHL. That's the difference. Is Bolduc's already had that time to adjust, while Mailloux hasn't. So I guess what I can say, sure, after 4 games, the Canadians won the trade. But in the grand scheme of things, I am going to take back what I said. Let's see how it plays out. And this is why it's so important sometimes that you comment, because we have a discussion. I just was so, one way on this topic where I'm like, you know what? The Canadians won. This was a joke to even make a trade. And now, because of some of your comments, you really had me thinking all day. Well, he really hasn't played many games in the NHL. He's done great things in the AHL, which I've already talked about so many times. But Bolduc's had time to adjust. So am I making too premature of basically a determination of who won? And the answer would have been yes. And I own that. That's ownership. I own that. But maybe this is a conversation we can visit at the end of the season. Or maybe this is a conversation we can visit even next season. But I do think eventually it's going to be a conversation that we're going to have, especially just because these are 2 players that a lot of people have their eyes on in the league as it is. But this was the first time in a long time where your comments truly had me just thinking all day. Like, seriously, thinking all day. And it's not fair to make an assumption based off of only 4 games. So I applaud you for commenting, but I hope you can understand from my perspective my own frustration, considering the fact that Zach Bolduc was my favorite player, one of my favorite players. My favorite player, we know it's Robert Thomas. but one of my favorite players, my favorite prospect. You have no idea how excited I was about him, but it is what it is, and time to move on. So let's talk about game time before we talk about the next couple games, because we have some really big games in the Lou. Hockey season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for the opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be a total headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. Let's go Blues. That's where Game Time comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets fast, easy, and stress free. I personally love the fact that Game Time is so easy to use. I love the fact that I can find tickets for under $25. Do you know how big of a deal that is, considering how expensive literally every single thing is when it comes to life these days? It's not easy. So for me, yeah, that's something where I personally feel like I can really use Game Time to my advantage. And most importantly, not only can I use it to my advantage, but so can you. So take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. So the Blues do have a couple big games coming up, and I think it's important that we do address those games because, again, when you look at the Blues, and again, I'm not trying to diss on the Blues at all, but they haven't won at home yet. And you have the Dallas Stars tomorrow night, and Dallas is a very good team. And not only are they a good team, but they're also in your division. Now, when you talk about conference play, Western Conference, the Blues are hosting the Kings on Tuesday night. And then Thursday night, you have another division game with the Mammoth. And I want to focus mostly on why division games are so important because right now, and again, I'm not trying to be like, oh my God, let's go look at the division. But you have the Avalanche that are on a 2-game win streak. The Jets are on a 3-game win streak, right? And the Stars, they just came off of a loss. And the Stars lost yesterday to the Canucks. Well, the Blues beat the Canucks. And this is my whole point, is where all these teams right now are going to be battling so hard. And I know that it's easy to say, hey, I don't think anybody has this mentality, but if you do, like, oh, if you don't win now, like, you can make it up, blah, blah, blah. No, the beginning of the season is so important. And this is something that I believe we don't talk about enough. Why is it that we wait until it's the end of the season when it's crunch time? I feel like that's not productive. And I feel like we have to be aggressive early on. You know what I mean? And the way that I'm trying to explain it to you is this. We know Dallas is going to be an issue. We know Jake Ottinger is going to be an issue. We know that. So let's just say it how it is. The Blues haven't been good at home. It doesn't matter who's in net. It doesn't matter if it's Jordan Binnington. It doesn't matter if it's Joel Hofer. It's not good. We don't see good at home. I mean, the Blues got shut out 5-0 to the Minnesota Wild on their home opener. And then a couple nights ago, the Blues have an ugly 8-3 loss to the Chicago Blackhawks, which is embarrassing. Yes, I know division play, but still embarrassing because it's Chicago. But in my opinion, I do believe that this team needs to just take a breath and reset because they played really good on home ice during the playoffs against the Jets. So I don't know if it's like a home ice issue or if it's that they're in their heads or they're just getting outplayed. It could be numerous things, but they had a 4-game homestand. You lost one, okay? So let's try to win this homestand. That should be the mentality. And I know that right now it might be a little bit difficult to do so, But you have a guy like Logan Mailloux, who was the last player on the ice today. I know I talked about Logan a lot on the beginning. According to Jeremy Rutherford, he was the last player on the ice today. And putting in the work, right? When you had the practice lines today, it was a little bit different than what we were used to seeing, but I still think it's interesting. So I'm going to go say it. Again, this is courtesy of Jeremy Rutherford. So with the practice lines and the first line centering Robert Thomas to the left, Dylan Holloway, and to the right, Jake Neighbors. Second line centering Pius Suter to the left, Bushi, to the right, Snuggie. Third line centering Braden Shen to the left, Mojo to the right, Kairu. Fourth line, Bukstad to the left, Texier to the right, Walker. And then injured is Sonny and Torchenko. Defense, Fowler, Pareko, Broberg, Folk, Tucker, Kessel. Today's extra was Mayu, Binner, and Hofer. So it was really interesting, right, for those lines. I didn't hate the lines. The only thing I will say is that moving Jordan Kyrou to the third line I just not a big fan of that. I don't see him as a bottom six player. And I hope that if those are the lines that we see tomorrow, that it doesn't get in his head by any means, because when I look at Kyrou, I just don't see him as a bottom six. And I just hope that these lines work. I do. Because I think with Holloway and Thomas, and that's what was most interesting to me, was the first line, Thomas centering Hollis to the left and Neighbors to the right. I think that has a potential to be a really good line. But from what we're used to seeing, we see a lot of chemistry between Holloway and Kyrou. Well, now that we don't have them on the same line, I hope that we see that same type of chemistry, and I think we will. And it's interesting. Dylan Holloway and Robert Thomas have a lot in common with how they play. So I am actually really curious to see that. I think that another interesting switch, by the way, that I want to point out is swapping Shen and Suter. Now, I figured Braden Shen at some point might be centering the third line. Did I expect it to be this early? No. But I think Suter was the better candidate to have as your second line center. But I respect Braden Shen so much. You know, I've watched Braden his whole entire career, and, you know, I just want them to put him in the best possible position that he can thrive in. Because, again, you want the best out of all of your players. But I do like that Elise Shenny will be with Kyrou. Now, Matthew Joseph, that's an interesting one. Just considering that Mojo, I mean, it's weird, right? Matthew Joseph and Kyrou, didn't see that. And then, of course, your fourth line with Bukstad, Texier, and Walker, that's fine. But I think with Kessel, and I think I said this yesterday on the show, that I did believe that he would be getting the start. It's because after the game that Logan Mailloux had, I figured that they might as well rest him. And then Coach Montgomery said, we're thinking the long-term game with Logan Mailloux. Sometimes you need to reset and go up in the press box and watch a game. And we're going to work with him. We have a plan, and he gets back in the lineup. I don't ever expect him to come back out. And I think personally that this is the best thing for him. And I know that there's some fans that are upset, but realistically, you're going to really put him back in after a game that he had like that, you know? You got to make sure that the kid has a good mindset, he's ready to go, and he knows how to improve. So there's a lot to it, but I think the Blues are making ultimately the right decision. But I want to talk to you about my friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Personally, we have a lot of good football games coming up. I mean, we had the Unk Bowl last night. Is that hip? Rodgers and Flacco and crazy. Anyways, we do have an over the seas game with the Rams and the Jags. I think the Rams are going to win. Eagles, Vikings, Jalen and Wentz. I'm not going to even touch that. Oh, this is a good game. I'm joking. The Dolphins and the Browns. Yeah. Oh, some of these games this week are kind of like trash. The Bucks and the Lions should be good. I'm going to actually take the Bucks on that. So let's go to the Bucks. And then we have the Commanders and Cowboys. And let's go take the Commanders. So let's go take the Commanders and Bucks, put into a little parlay. That's what we're going to do for this week. That's a good one, actually. So what are we waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. So every single Friday, I have a segment called Are We Feeling Blue? Was this a good week or was this a bad week for the St. Louis Blues? And I would say this was an okay week. Let's be very realistic. It is early in the season. I understand we've seen some things that we do not like. I get it. I get the frustration. More than anybody, I get the frustration. But at the same time, okay? But at the same time, you have to put it into perspective and categorize it that way. On Monday, we had a 5-2 victory over the Canucks. That still counts as this week. And then on Wednesday, we had an 8-3 loss. The win was great, the loss wasn't. Both can be true. But we have seen excellence from Jake Neighbors, which, in my opinion, has been the highlight of the week. We didn't see a great performance from Joel Hofer from Logan Mailloux. Okay. We're only a few games in. Tomorrow night will be a test. Saturday night hockey, my favorite type of hockey. And the Blues need to push themselves so hard tomorrow night because Dallas is going to be a challenge. I mean, in the preseason, I know it was a lot of our younger guys. We did lose to the Stars 5-3, so not so good. But again, that's preseason. But then after Dallas, you have the Kings and then the Mammoth. So you need to be consistent. You need to play hard. And that's my biggest concern with the Blues right now is just the consistency. How is it they go on the road and they look like a completely different team than how they look when they're at home? While we only had a small sample size, it's something that I've noticed. And it's something that I wonder if they notice. And the last thing that you want players to do is to get in their heads about things. But I think these guys will be fine. I think that at the end of the day, it's so early. You need to let it go. Learn, grow, play hard. But when you're having these, division and conference games so early on like this, you need to give it your everything because this game is just as important as game 82 and you're fighting for a playoff spot in the final game of the season. That's how you need to attack these games. So yeah, am I disappointed they lost to Chicago? Yeah, absolutely. Like, who wouldn't be? But am I happy that they beat the Canucks? Yes. So, two things are true. Let's get back into the win column tomorrow, and I will talk to you tomorrow. And like always, let's go Blues.